Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Guys, today's video is going to be a big one. I, like many people, have become obsessed, enamored with the show Heated Rivalry. And in honor of that, I thought, let's keep the good vibes going. So for today's video, we are going to be reading all of the books in the Game Changer series. There are 6 books we're going to be reading in this video. Game Changer, Heated Rivalry, Tough Guy, Common Goal, Role Model, and The Long Game. I am so excited. This is also going to be our first reading vlog of 2026, and it's reading a series that I'm already kind of obsessed with. If you guys have seen one of my big series reading vlogs before, I like to give a little preface beforehand of my experience with the series. So if you just want to skip that and go right to the vlog, I will have all the timestamps linked below in the description. I'm also going to probably talk about some spoilers for the books as I read them. So if you don't want spoilers, you can skip those sections of the reading vlog as well, to maybe move to the end to see my final thoughts on the series as a whole. But if you want to hear me gush about what I like about the show Heated Rivalry, then keep on watching. To say that it's a little bit of a shock that this show has grown to be as popular as it is kind of an understatement. But I think honestly what I like about Heated Rivalry is also a representation of what makes the show good overall. The first aspect obviously is the romance. For me that means basically all of the tender romantic parts. I personally think episode 5 and 6 are absolute cinema. I know the first thing that anyone says when talking about the series is, oh my god, there's so much sex in it. And yeah, in the first 2 episodes, there definitely is. But honestly, I kind of like those episodes the least. Not because I'm a prude or anything, but I just feel like episodes 5 and 6 have the perfect balance. And episode 5 doesn't even have any explicit sex scenes. I've definitely said this before in terms of books that have smut scenes. I really like it when the sex scenes are in service to the larger plot and the character's overall journey, and I feel like that really works and happens in Heated Rivalry. The other big factor is just the fact that this is an actually really well made show. The editing, the music choices, the performances, you can tell at the same time this was made with 12 Canadian dollars in a dream, but they really made it work. I feel like the show is a testament to the fact that you do not need a big budget, just really good casting, good editors and writers that know what to focus on to get people committed and invested in the show. I have nothing but love and respect for everyone involved with the show. I'm so glad that the creator and all the actors are getting so much praise for making a show that is so true to the books as well as the creator's original artistic vision. I really love it. I'm so glad it's going to get a second and probably 3rd season as well. And I'm also really glad that so many people have been finding queer romance books as a result of the series getting so popular. They totally didn't realize that niche. It seems like so many people did not realize this niche existed in books beyond Red, White, and Royal Blue, which I feel was the poster child for gay romance novels before this. I like to say I read primarily queer romance books. This one was not one that I had really had on my radar because sports romances in general are just not really my niche. But you know, queer historical romances, queer sports romances, we're kind of just all cousins. So I'm very happy that an adjacent niche to mine is getting a lot of love and praise. Anyway, that's enough talking about the TV show Heated Rivalry. We are going to go ahead and jump into the first book in the series, which is Game Changer. This book follows Scott and Kip, who are a side couple in the TV show. Scott is the captain of the New York Admirals, and Kip is a smoothie shop barista that they kind of have a little meet cute when Scott comes in to get a smoothie. He feels a connection with Kip and kind of considers him a good luck charm to break him out of a really bad losing streak that Scott has been having this last season. I'm really excited to read this book. I really love their romance in the TV show. So I'm really excited to get into the original source material and see more of these characters. Anyway, with that long intro out of the way, let's get right on in to the reading vlog. So I am going to get my makeup on for today. And while I do, I thought I would talk to you about my experience in reading Game Changer, because I read the entirety of this book in the last week, and I really liked it. I think this is probably common knowledge at this point, but Heated Rivalry, despite being the name of the show, is actually the name of the 2nd book in this series, and the series overall is called the Game Changer series, named after the first book in the series, which is called Game Changer, and that is the book that focuses on Scott Hunter and Kip Brady. Scott, who is the captain of the New York Admirals, and Kip, who is a smoothie shop worker that Scott ends up starting to date. I have to say, there are parts of the show were honestly some of my favorites. I really loved episode 3, and then there are parts of episode 5, I think, in particular, was the part that made that episode have a perfect rating on IMDb. So I was really excited to go ahead and learn more of the overall context with their story and check out the book that they were originally from, since obviously they aren't like super heavily focused on in the TV show. However, I do think that the way that the TV show did their book made a lot of sense and kind of like condensed down the most important parts of their relationship, even if some of the like timeline stuff was changed around. Probably the biggest change is that the entirety of their relationship happens over the course of like one hockey season, whereas in the show there's like a 3-year time jump. And it does kind of make more sense in the show why Scott would like do the things he does and like how serious he takes their relationship, because in the book it really kind of seems like after only knowing each other for a month, they're like telling the other person that they love them, which is definitely moving a little fast considering like how serious Scott coming out would be and how much that would like change his life. To see him like kind of like going out on a limb and being willing to come out for someone he's only really known for 3 months is like a bit of a stretch. But I still really, really loved a lot of parts of this book. Definitely my favorite section was actually the end, kind of everything related to Scott making the decision that he was going to come out. I feel like since we don't really get a lot of his internal monologue in the TV show, there's a lot of like kind of side characters and relationships that are built up more in the book, and kind of the like gradual process that Scott has of like first telling his agent, then telling some of his like closest teammates, and eventually telling his coach the fact that he's gay and that he's planning on coming out sometime after they win the Stanley Cup. I also like the development of like Scott's friendship and relationship with his other teammates. Obviously we see a little bit of Carter in the TV show, but I feel like the additional other members of the Admirals and like his friend group that we get to meet just like kind of like better flesh out the world and flesh out like his character by seeing his like other relationships. And I really, really, really liked the scene that I guess is obviously like happening off camera in the TV show, when after the Admirals have won the Stanley Cup and Kip is like invited into like the locker room and meets all of like Scott's other team members, and they're all like so excited to meet him and like just are really interested in learning about the guy that made Scott like want to finally come out and like see like what's so great about him. But they're also at the same time kind of like roasting Scott a little bit of like, okay, he definitely had like absolutely no game when he was like trying to pick you up, right? It's just really, really cute to see. I also feel like the series has done a good job of like kind of giving us glimpses into other potential characters that we'll see in future books. There's a couple like small mentions of Ilya in the first book, especially in the very, very end, like epilogue part, when they're at like a gay bar in honor of Scott, and Scott notices that Ilya is like dancing with men in a kind of like familiarity that makes him think that Ilya might have prior experience in this, which obviously flows really nicely considering the second book in the series is focused so much on Ilya. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really cute. I think if you already like the TV show, I would definitely consider reading the first one in addition to the second one. I don't think you're necessarily like missing out on like large chunks of the storyline by only watching the TV show adaptation of their relationship, but there's definitely a lot of parts that really like heightened my viewing experience, especially since I do really like them as characters. I think it's a great option to go ahead and kind of like get the additional context of reading the book that these characters are originally from. I think I'm going to give this 4 stars, and I'm probably also going to rate it like 4 out of 5 in terms of like a spice rating. I have seen like a chart that like blocks out all of the chapters that have spice in the entire Game Changer series, and it does kind of seem like the first 2 books are the most intense, which I do think is like kind of interesting. I'm like wondering what the like creative process was for like focusing less on that aspect for the later books in the series and with the other couples that we get to meet. But yes, 4 out of 5, I really did like this one. So I have also made a lot of progress in reading Heated Rivalry. I'm currently in the middle, I think, of chapter 15, and I'm 44% of the way through. Pretty similar to the TV show adaptation, this tells the story of Shane Hollander and Ilya Rozanov from the time they met before their rookie season, going throughout their like 8-year-long situationship to them eventually realizing they have feelings for the other person, and how they're going to navigate being professional hockey players on rival teams while still being in a relationship. The part of the timeline I'm in right now is 2016, kind of like middle of episode 4. So far I am enjoying this book. Again, from already having watched the TV show, I can kind of like see where a lot of these scenes in the TV show match up with these specific chapters and like moments in the books. Some stuff has been like shifted around, but I do think it's been pretty faithful overall. This book is definitely very, very smutty. More so than the first book in the series. It honestly feels like almost every single chapter there's something going on, which is definitely how the TV show feels sometimes. However, I don't know if it's because I've like become desensitized from seeing this all in the TV show version that I'm not having that strong of a reaction in reading the book version. I do honestly feel like though, it being so prevalent, it might be like getting in the way of a little bit of the characters like interacting and like seeing more of their like personalities and relationship outside of that come through. I guess it is kind of highlighting the fact that maybe in the beginning stages of the relationship, this was just like them having a hookup and them trying not to take it very seriously. And it's only in like the later years, once they like kind of realize how well they do with each other as people, that they're going to have more of that like actual like romantic connection, and more of that will like become a main focus for the later half of the book. As I mentioned before, I feel like there's a good kind of like lead in of other side characters who we'll eventually like learn more about in subsequent books in the series. There's a scene on the plane when we meet Ryan Price, who I'm pretty sure is the main character of the third book. At the time, he is on the same team as Ilya and is like a really nervous flyer. So Ilya like shares his iPad while he's watching the 5th Fast and Furious movie, so they can like watch it together as something to like take Ryan's mind off of being in the airplane. I thought that was just like a really cute scene and kind of showing Ilya being like more considerate. Another moment that I thought was really, really cute, there's a part when Shane, I guess, has like bought a new apartment and was like moved out of his parents' house, and Yuna, who is his mom, comments that he like really needs a new lamp for his like living room. And he's of course acting a little whiny, saying that he's an adult and he can like take care of himself. But then you see in like a later scene when he's at the apartment, the narration specifically mentions his new lamp. Like, okay, mama's boy, getting a new lamp because his mom told him to. So those are my thoughts on the book so far. I do think since episode 5 and 6 are my favorites of the TV show, the ending portion of this book is probably going to be my favorite part. So I am very excited to see what the like book version has of these like really important scenes, and getting like more of the internal monologues on both of the characters with the stuff that goes on in the last part of the book. I honestly have been flying through this. I honestly feel like it's only been like 2 main days where I've been listening to the audiobook. So I probably can get this done in the next couple days, and maybe also make more progress in the next book in the series as well. Okay, so I thought I would give my final update in reading Heated Rivalry. I think I'm going to give this book 4 stars. I anticipated that I would love the later half of the book, since that is the section that covers like the last 2 episodes in the TV show, which are my favorite 2 episodes, and I really did like those sections of the book as well. All of the parts with the Scott and Kip couple reveal from Shane and Ilya's perspective was so amazing. And then everything related to the cottage was like so good and sweet. I really, really love their relationship confession with Ilya calling Shane a problem, that he like really could have any woman that he wanted, but he keeps always thinking about Shane, and then being like, I don't want this problem to ever go away. I'm dead. I also wanted to say that since I started filming this video, Rachel Reed announced that there is going to be a 3rd Shane and Ilya book coming out in September, and you can bet your ass that I will be pre-ordering that book. Now that I have finished Heated Rivalry, we are going to move right into reading the 3rd book in the series, which is Tough Guy. Hello? Hi, miss. Yeah. What is it? Is he? Yeah. Oh my gosh, no way. Whoa. What do you have to say for yourself? Shy. Missy. Missy. So guess who just like read an entire book without giving you any updates again? Yeah, it's me. Actually, if you had talked to me like 3 hours ago, I would have told you I was only at 88% through reading Tough Guy, but I have now finished the book, so I can give you kind of like my entire thoughts, as well as like a general summary about what this book is about. So the main characters of Tough Guy are Ryan Price and Fabian Sala. Ryan Price is a like defenseman on the Toronto team. He's what's called an enforcer, which I think is basically like, if other members of the team get into fights with the other opposing team, he's supposed to like intimidate or like fight on their behalf. He's this like super tall 6'7" lumberjack looking burly guy. I don't know if this is particularly common to hockey, but basically as a teenager, he actually lived, I think, with this like prominent coach's family, and the son in that family was Fabian. So they're kind of like former childhood friends / childhood crushes that end up reconnecting. In the present timeline, Fabian is like an up-and-coming musician. He's very much like femboy / androgynous in his presentation, and he very much does not like hockey because it was such a like big part of his family growing up. they really like prioritize hockey over his musical pursuits. So he very much feels like hockey really like tainted his childhood and like family life. And to be honest, Ryan also doesn't really like hockey anymore. He just kind of feels like he's going through the motions and continuing to do it because it's like the only thing he thinks he's really good at. Anyway, at the start of the book, Ryan has been traded to the Toronto team and he ends up reconnecting with Fabian once he's moved there. I did like this book and I'm probably going to give it 4 stars. I don't know if there were as many like really standout favorite scenes, although at the same time I also don't really think that there's anything like wrong with it. One thing that I feel like was kind of more prominent early on and sort of faded out throughout the book is the very much like queer found family that surrounds Fabian and his friends. I love Fabian's one friend Vanessa, very much giving like quirky white girl and her gaggle of gays, which just feels very accurate. I did feel like going into this that I would really like Ryan. I think he's very, very cute. I really love a like tough guy with a heart of gold who's basically like a big teddy bear. Ryan also is suffering from like low self-esteem and has a lot of like anxiety issues. And I feel like those parts of his personality coupled with his like physical attributes reminds me a lot of Lawrence Brown from The Lawrence Brown Affair, who I feel like I've talked on this channel as being one of my like favorite male leads in a romance book. So I feel like going into this I was very much like predisposed to like Ryan as a main character. I wanted to pivot to talk about the like spice in this series overall, because I don't know if you've been online, but I remember seeing on Instagram this like chart that maps out all of these spicy chapters in the entire series. And from what it looks like, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th books have a lot less scenes overall, but I don't necessarily think that that means these books are like less spicy. I don't know if it was because I was like desensitized from seeing everything already play out in the Heated Rivalry TV show, but I did kind of feel like these smut scenes in this book were like more intense, or maybe like longer, had more going on. I feel like maybe technically Ilya and Shane get more action, but it's not as detailed, or like maybe only will be a very like brief mention in a chapter, but that still technically counts as like a spicy scene, so it's part of like the listing. I don't know. I just know going into reading the 4th book, I have noticed that the chapter lengths for the chapters that have the smut scenes tend to be like twice as long as the other chapters sometimes. So even though it might be like less frequent or spread out overall in the book, it's not like you're necessarily getting less content. Anyway, those are my thoughts from reading Tough Guy. I like this one. I don't necessarily know if I like it more than the other 2, even though I'm technically giving them all like an even 4-star rating. I kind of just feel like with the trajectory, I'm probably going to give all of these books around a 4-star. And then since the general consensus is that The Long Game is the best book in the series, that one might end up having a higher rating. With that in mind, I did go ahead and start the 4th book in the series, which is Common Goal. Whereas Ryan and Fabian's story was pretty separate, I feel, compared to the first 2 books in the series, Common Goal kind of like brings to the forefront 2 side characters from the first book, being Kyle Swift and Eric Bennett. Kyle is a bartender at the gay bar that Kip frequents in the first book in the series, and Eric Bennett is the goaltender on the New York hockey team and is also one of the best friends of Scott. The kind of general setup of this book is that Eric is planning on retiring at the end of this hockey season. He also, the year prior, divorced from his wife of 20 years. And also in his like newly divorced life, he is going to act on the fact that he is bisexual. It kind of, in his eyes, was not really relevant considering the fact that he was just like married to a woman for 20 years. But now he finally has the opportunity to openly date men. Like I said before, Kyle is both a bartender at the gay bar that Kip often goes to. He's also a grad student studying the same thing that Kip is interested in, so they have like become friends in the 2 years since Game Changers took place. Kyle has a little bit of a like residual crush on Kip, but at this point in the story, Kip and Scott are actually engaged. So Kyle's like, okay, I actually need to like move on from this crush and like find a guy that I can settle down with. At the same time, he has a lot of like trauma related to dating like often the very like worst possible option for him, particularly a lot of older guys that are just kind of like using him to experiment and don't really take their relationship seriously. So at first when he meets Eric, he's like very hesitant to open up and like allow himself to think that they could possibly be a good match for each other, because he assumes that Eric is straight, or again just like not interested in him because he is much younger than him, since they have an age gap of like around 15 years. But Scott and Kip think the 2 of them at the very least would be like good friends, so they start off the story with the intention of just getting to know each other as friends. But obviously things are going to move into them being more like romantically interested in the other one. I believe I'm in chapter either 11 or 12, and I'm almost halfway. And honestly, I really, really like the dynamic between Eric and Kyle. I feel like Rachel Reed did a really good job of keeping it so that it doesn't feel like there's a big power imbalance despite there being a big age gap between the two of them. Because even though obviously Eric is wealthy and famous and a lot older than Kyle, he's very, very, like, completely new to the whole gay scene and, like, how to interact when he's trying to pick up guys. Whereas Kyle has, like, all of those, like, street smarts and is giving Eric a lot of advice. And you can see a lot of the moments when, like, Eric is very much, like, in over his head and Kyle is acting as, like, his lifeline. I also feel like the two of them have really, really good chemistry with the other. And them trying to, like, play off and act like they don't have feelings for the other person in this beginning section is, like, such a good setup. I also really like some of these side moments that we've seen with Scott and Kip again. Just them acting like the most overly, like, lovey-dovey, cutesy couple that are, like, perfect for each other. I always really like it when you see a character that has previously been the main character as a side character in a later book, so you can kind of see how that character is being perceived by the new main character. I feel like it's really interesting, like, seeing Kyle's perspective on Kip, like, just, like, how bubbly and friendly and overly nice Kip is, there having been, like, a 2.5-year kind of, like, time jump, and how the characters have, like, grown and changed, and, like, the new relationships that they've had with some of the other old side characters coming to the forefront in this book. Overall, I'm really, really enjoying this one. I actually think, according to the same chart I mentioned before, I'm, like, about to start one of the really long smut chapters in this book. I'm supposed to go out tonight to a friend's birthday party, and I don't know if I have the mental strength to listen to that chapter while I'm on the train. I might just have to wait until tomorrow when I'm, like, hanging out at home. But hopefully I'll come back to you in the next, like, day or two with my next update for this book. Okay, so I'm back to give another reading update. For you, it's probably been like a couple seconds, but for me, it's been like almost 2 weeks since I last filmed. I ended up getting sick. I think just like a basic common cold, nothing too serious, but it did make me lose my voice for a couple days, so I couldn't really talk and give any update. Anyway, in that time, I have finished Common Goal, as well as started, read, and now finished Role Model. So let's go ahead and give an update for both those books. Starting off with Common Goal, I think I'm going to give this 4 stars. I did really like it in the beginning, but I felt like the drama was a little forced and also a little annoying insofar as like the two characters were just like so bad at communicating and just like assuming the other person like didn't have any feelings. It definitely was good drama though, with Eric like kind of like basically coming to the conclusion that he knew what Kyle needed and then not actually listening to Kyle, and that entire situation really like fulfilling one of Kyle's worst nightmares. I did think then you could really tell that Eric like regretted everything he did, and his apology and confession with him trying to like make amends for his bad decisions before was really good. I did see a review that mentioned that a lot of the like middle books have a kind of crazy whiplash between their like third act breakups and then right after the next chapter they will be getting back together. Like I'm pretty sure in this book there was only like 15 minutes of audiobook time between the breakup and then the love confession, which I will say, like, kind of annoying that there even was a breakup. Although, like I just said, it was a really good dramatic scene for the book. I do think that the, like, apology and the confession scene were some of my favorites in the series so far. It felt so believable. I think out of all of the books in the series, this is probably the one that's the most no plot, just vibes. It really was mostly focused on these two characters like building their personalities and their relationship with one another, and not too much like extra stuff going on. That being said, I really did like the extra stuff that was going on with Eric. I thought all the parts related to him coming to terms with his retirement was so cute, and I actually did really like a lot of the hockey parts in this book. I also really liked all of the scenes where Eric and Kyle were kind of like confiding in their respective parts of Skip. I thought that Scott gave like really good advice to Eric, kind of reflecting back on the problems that Scott and Kip had in Game Changer, and Scott realizing that he had to allow Kip to make his own decisions and not make them for him. And then Eric obviously needed to do the same with Kyle instead of assuming and making that choice on his behalf, which of course Eric doesn't really follow Scott's advice, but I think it's also believable that having some like self-hatred and a desire to push people away would cause you to make like an illogical decision like that, which is something that Eric is really going through at that phase in the book. So yeah, for this book, I'm going to give it 4 stars. Okay, now let's move into talking about the 5th book in the series, which is Role Model. This book is a romance between Troy and Harris. Troy is a character we met previously as like a very minor side character in Tough Guy, when he is like one of the star players on the Toronto team. He is best friends with this other character, Dallas Kent, who is sort of like a reoccurring villain in the series, it seems. They were best friends until Troy started seeing some allegations online of women coming forward that Dallas had assaulted them. Troy publicly calls out Dallas at a practice, and as kind of a form of retaliation and to keep Troy quiet, he is then traded to the Ottawa team, who at the time when he's traded, Ilya is in his 2nd year as being the captain there. And the other half of the relationship is Harris, who is the openly gay social media manager for the Ottawa team. Oh my god, did I love this book. I love Troy and Harris and their dynamic. They are like the perfect grumpy sunshine pairing. I completely understand that, yes, Troy is really annoying to read his perspective in the beginning half of the book, but I feel like it's also completely understandable because Troy is like absolutely going through it emotionally. He has like 0 confidence in himself and is very much like, you don't want to hang out with a loser like me, and just kind of like assumes that everyone sees the bad in him, so he's like really trying to isolate himself, which is obviously a combination of the fact that he, one, was like kind of a huge asshole back when he was friends with Dallas, but also he had like basically everyone on his team turn on him when he decided to stand up for what's right. So it seems very much like he is just trying to like fade into the background on his new team and is very like untrusting of people, and also assumes that people are going to be untrusting of him in return. And then Harris is just like too nice and sweet for his own good, and his sunshine energy is just like radiating off of him. And Troy, as much as he really wants to like isolate himself and thinks that Harris is too good for him, he also like really is craving the opportunity to feel that happiness again. So I just like really like their relationship. I really liked all of the growth that Troy went through over the course of this book. I also really loved all of the side characters. I really loved the entire Ottawa team being this like big found family. I love Ilya as like a mentor figure to Troy. Him very much like understanding how Troy having a like horrible relationship with his dad, even without Troy like kind of explaining things to him, Ilya just like knows and completely gets it. It's just like so great to see him be this like supportive force that he never had as well. I also kind of noticed as I read kind of all the spin-off books that basically all of the romantic leads in the series that aren't hockey players do have a pretty wide variety of looks that I feel like is reflective of like actual average gay guys. I feel like Kip is the more like traditionally attractive athletic type. Kyle is leaning more into like a slim, twinkier type look. Fabian is much more twink to femboy. And then Harris is more like stockier, chubby, kind of like cub territory. So I do think there is like a decent level of body diversity when it comes to all of the like romantic leads of the characters that aren't the hockey players. I really love Harris as a character. I think he's so incredibly funny. Also, out of all the characters, he's the one that reminds me the most of my own like personal real life gay best friends. So those are my thoughts on books 4 and 5 in the series. We're going to move into the most recent book that has come out so far, which is The Long Game, which is the continuation of Ilya and Shane's romance. I am so excited for this one. Obviously, because of loving the TV show Heated Rivalry, I'm really excited to see all of the moments in this that are probably going to make their way into the 2nd season of the show. So I'm going to go ahead and get started in reading this, and I will come back to you guys when I have my first update. We went to Target yesterday and I got the new chocolate strawberry creamer from Chobani, and it is so good. Very like strawberry forward, which is honestly what I prefer when making a like chocolate strawberry mocha. I'll try and pick up another one before the season is out because I'm pretty sure this is just like a limited flavor. I totally forgot there were some other updates I wanted to give you guys. So before we get into The Long Game, I actually have a couple other smaller updates. First of all, as you probably saw from some B-roll, we did end up watching Ten Dance, and I definitely liked it, but it wasn't a fave. I did find it a little hard to follow at some points. I've definitely noticed this in other Japanese media, but I feel like sometimes when Westerners speak in English, they will really over enunciate. I'm guessing it's to make the subtitles easier in Japanese, but I feel like it really takes me out because of how stilted it sounds. But I did really like the two main actors, and I thought they had a lot of chemistry. I really hope they do a second one. I heard that the movie did really, really well on Netflix. And if there's anything Netflix is good at, it is milking a successful product to its full value, and honestly, even beyond that. I mentioned in my last update that I was sick for 2 weeks, and I do feel like I still have a little bit of a lingering cough, but I'm mostly better now. It also happened right at the same time there was a huge snowstorm in Philadelphia, and because it's been so snowy and cold, I feel like I'm getting really bad ice headaches whenever I go outside. And I can't really feel to 100% better. But I am kind of also happy that I'm reading all of the books in the Game Changer series. I like the perfect season since pretty much all of them take place in January and February. Also, I did go ahead and I actually bought a copy of The Long Game because I anticipated that this would be my favorite of the series and the one that I would want to actually own and annotate, which I have been doing as I've been reading it so far. With all the other books in the series, I just listened to their audiobook versions. And this one, I have been mostly listening to the audiobook, and then I've been adding bookmarks in Hoopla to then go back and add tabs onto my physical copy. So I'm going to move in to talk about my update for The Long Game. Like I mentioned before, this one is the continuation of Ilya and Shane's story. It is set, I think, around 3 years since they decided to become a official couple at the end of Heated Rivalry. In that time, Ilya has moved from Boston to be the captain of the Ottawa hockey team. They have started up their charity as well as run their summer camps. Ilya has also very much ingratiated himself into Shane's family, which is honestly so cute to see. It was very much my number one wish for this book and also for the second season to have more of that, and it's definitely been delivering. I love all of the scenes where Shane's parents are taking care of Ilya like a second son. Anyway, things seem to be going well for Ilya and Shane. They've been able to keep their relationship a secret except for telling a very small select group of people who either one figured it out or two are just very close to them. However, Ilya has become a little bit more anxious. He really does want to come out and not have to hide this huge part of his life from all of his teammates. Whereas Shane is much more by the book, really wanting to stick to their original plan of them just slowly becoming more and more close to one another in the public eye, so that after they retire, they can be a couple then, when they're more out of the spotlight. I'm currently on page 290. I'm in the middle of chapter 27, and I believe there's around 40-ish chapters in this book. I'd say I probably have maybe a little under a third left, and I have been emotionally wrecked. This book is so good. I honestly can't even form a full coherent thought when I think about how much I love this book. I think I said before in an update that I was excited for season 2. And if this is what season 2 is going to be like, I'm going to be inconsolable when this show comes back. Like I said before, I'm obsessed with every scene where Ilya's hanging out with Shane's parents. It's so incredibly cute, and you can see how much he is really, really craving that connection with another person, especially since he grew up with his mother dying young and his father being very strict and distant from him. So I really love all of the scenes of him bonding with Shane's parents as his surrogate parents. I also love how this book is really overlapping with the timeline of Role Model. So we see Ilya's relationship with the other members of the Ottawa team, and then the introduction of Troy, and then some of the scenes that happen in Role Model from Ilya's perspective. In some ways, I kind of feel Heated Rivalry was a little bit more of Shane's story, whereas I feel The Long Game is much more Ilya's book. I really love everything going on with Ilya's story in terms of him coming to terms with his depression, and also some of the pent-up feelings he's been avoiding regarding his relationship with Shane. I feel the big fight that they have in this book is very understandable because Ilya is very bad at communicating, and then Shane's autism is making him want to seek out answers, and he thinks he's being helpful, asking all these questions and trying to understand. But it's just making Ilya get more and more mad because he feels Shane should just intuitively know what's going on. In that way, was a very believable fight of the two of them just kind of breaking down in communication. The scene later on after the whole plane engine emergency landing situation where Ilya thinks he's going to die and he's frantically sending Shane DMs on Instagram. just saying how much he loves him, thinking that these are going to be his last words. And then Shane, after the fact, like learning everything that happened with the Ottawa team's plane and realizing that he could have like fully lost Ilya, kind of prompting him to completely change his plans. That whole like emotional scene kind of making him decide that he's going to change their entire plans. And instead of like waiting until after they retire, they're going to try and come out in the summer. And then Shane going ahead and like proposing to Ilya. Oh my god, that scene, I feel like that was the tipping point from me going, I like this book, to I love this book. I feel like I was telling my wife about that scene, and she was very surprised that Shane was the one that went ahead and proposed, because from her perspective and just seeing Heated Rivalry, it very much seems like Shane is a lot more quiet and reserved, and also a bit less of a risk taker. But I feel like just the fact that he is the one that proposes in the book, it shows how much growth he has gone through as a character, how he's realized how much Ilya means to him, and that he like really couldn't live in a world where he didn't have Ilya with him. Overall, I just like really love their relationship. Getting so far into reading this, I'm loving their relationship even more. I have a separate color of tabs for things that I'm really hoping will show up in the second season. I'm just really loving it. I'm a little terrified because I do still have like a third of the way to go through this. And I do know, I don't know if it's necessarily a spoiler, but basically there's a team that we come to really hate, and I'm not sure how we're going to like get to there in the last third of the book. I feel like we're definitely moved past any kind of like romance-based drama. Like there's not going to be any crazy third act breakup, because I think they already had like a huge fight and are now engaged. So I'm a little nervous to see if there's going to be another like big climax in this book. Anyway, that is my thoughts in reading this so far. I am going to read the rest of this probably in the next couple days, so I will come back to you with my final thoughts in reading The Long Game, as well as with reading the series overall. You have a weird quarter? Yeah, look at the back. What the fuck?
Okay, I have one. This is my only quarter.
Oh my god, wait, I like him though. So I finished reading The Long Game and I loved it so much. In the last third, there was so much stuff that happened that I now have to update you guys on. The first thing that is pretty positive is Ilya getting his dog Anya. Well, you can kind of see earlier on in this book, as well as in Role Model, that Ilya like really loves the team dog Chiron, and him and Shane have like tentatively talked about maybe getting a pet eventually. But obviously as hockey players, they travel so much for work, so Ilya's like not sure if he can commit to getting a dog. However, through the conversations Ilya has with his therapist, it kind of becomes clear that he needs something in his life outside of hockey and his relationship with Shane, like some new hobby for him to focus on. And the hobby he ends up choosing is becoming a dog dad. Anya is like an abandoned stray that's living on Harris's family farm. Harris invites Ilya over for dinner, and then Ilya meets Anya. It becomes clear that Harris was kind of trying to like almost set him up on like a blind date to try and convince him to adopt this dog, which of course he does, and immediately begins like spoiling her rotten. I think from the description of her, she's probably something similar to like a mini Aussie or like a mini Aussie mix, which is so cute because one of my professors also has a mini Aussie, and I can totally see Ilya with this type of dog. In terms of if there was another like big climax in this book, yes, there was. I knew pretty much exactly when we got like the setup of like the fake cameo type of website and Hayden saying he needed to go like basically film a cameo for someone, that Ilya and Shane were going to get outed by them accidentally being recorded in the background of a video. And that whole situation obviously was very traumatizing for Shane. It really sucks because not only was he like the one that was more scared of this happening, and obviously was very much like taking steps to eventually come out, but wasn't like ready for that fully. And then the fact that his team was so incredibly shitty to him over the fact that he was having a relationship with Ilya Rozanov. It is like, oh yeah, we definitely hate Montreal now. I did really like the scene though with Hayden kind of like trying to help in the locker room, trying to convince the other team that Shane is still the same person, that he's their captain that's led them to all of these Stanley Cup wins, and they should like show him more respect. I thought that was really cute. Honestly, I feel like a lot of the time I'm a little annoyed with Hayden, but I feel like this one scene in particular like really proved to me that like he is like a good friend for Shane. As you saw probably from my reactions in reading the last portion of the book, the ending was so incredibly cute. Definitely like very fan service heavy, in all of the like adorable things that were happening with Shane and Ilya's wedding. I was of course like emotionally distraught in Shane's dad, David, getting Ilya like ready for the wedding, and them deciding that since they could only have one kid, they would make Shane like the best son they could possibly ever have. But then they didn't expect that they would get another son through Ilya. It's just so cute. I really love seeing him healing and like finding a new family in the Hollanders. So yes, I really, really liked the end of this book. And I think for basically everything I've said for this so far, I'm going to give it 5 stars. There were some parts earlier on that I was kind of like, not middle of the road on, but wasn't like completely blowing me out of the water. But I feel like all of the relationship development and like dramatic events that happened in like the second half of this book, I was really, really enjoying it, and I really, really like where everything kind of like ended up. So yes, this is going to be a 5 stars, and it's also my first 5-star of 2026. I thought now I would go through and talk about the series as a whole, as well as some of my like wishes for season 2 of Heated Rivalry. As you've seen from my ratings, I liked all of the books and gave them all at least a 4 stars or above. I don't know if I would have gone out of my way to read this series if not for the show, but now that I'm in it, I'm definitely going to try and read more gay sports romances. I also thought I would try and maybe like rank all of the books. Obviously at the top we have The Long Game, being the only book that I gave 5 stars. Right after that is Role Model, considering I gave that one 4.5 stars. I really, really like the relationship of Troy and Harris. I think honestly, besides Ilya and Shane, they're probably like my other favorite couple of the series. Below that, I think I'm going to put Heated Rivalry. I do really like the way that the story is told over multiple years. And obviously I really do love Shane and Ilya. After that, I think I'm going to put Game Changer. I do see quite a few of the flaws in Game Changer, but I personally just like really, really like Scott's story. And I find him a very interesting and like compelling character. And for the final 2 books in the series, I kind of could go either way. I think what my gut is telling me right now is I probably would put Common Goal above Tough Guy. I just like the dynamic of Kyle and Eric a little bit more than I do Ryan and Fabian. I also was not a big fan of the 3rd act breakup in Tough Guy, and I felt like it somewhat came out of nowhere, or should have been something that was like more heavily brought up throughout the book. It just felt like all of a sudden that Fabian decided he didn't want to date Ryan, simultaneously with Ryan dealing with all of this other shit at the same time. And then obviously like 2 chapters later, they were getting back together. So yeah, I think that one is probably going to be the lowest right now. Although I could see it like flipping with Common Goal in my mind, just like based on the day. I think for what the TV show of Heated Rivalry is trying to do, I could see them completely leaving out Tough Guy and Common Goal, since those characters are only like very tangentially related to Ilya and Shane, and it honestly wouldn't be a big deal if they skipped them. I feel like Role Model is going to be a really, really great side story for season 2, since it takes place pretty much at the exact same time as The Long Game. Plus, I feel like the themes of coming out and like fighting against toxic masculinity is a good like undercurrent throughout the entire show already, and I would honestly love to see more of that. Plus, as Ottawa is becoming like the main team that we're going to follow and root for, it makes sense to like focus on fleshing out all of those characters on that team early on. The only thing that makes me a little bit nervous about season 2 is that Jacob Tierney has said that he really wants to only keep each season of Heated Rivalry as 6 episodes, which I don't understand. I understand maybe if we were going to do The Long Game as its own, but I feel like there's so much stuff that intertwines with Role Model that it needs more than 1 episode like we did in season 1, where Game Changer was just the focus of 1 episode and then the rest of it was just Heated Rivalry. I feel like ideally you could do maybe closer to like 8 episodes, and then have like 2 or 3 focus on Role Model and then the rest be The Long Game. I feel like that balance would make a lot more sense considering how much stuff happens in this book. Unless of course he's going to split up The Long Game into 2 seasons and then have Unrivaled be a 4th season, which I'm also not mad about. I would be fine if we actually got like 12 episodes focused on this overall. But that's just my speculation for right now, and we basically have like over a year until we get any kind of like indication on what this 2nd season is going to be about. Anyway, we're getting kind of to the end of this video. My final thoughts are that I'm really, really glad I read the series. I feel like if you've watched the TV show, definitely go ahead and try out the books. I feel like it was really helpful to read all of the books in order to kind of learn about all of the side characters. I feel like if you're thinking, oh, because I like the show, I only want to read Ilya and Shane's books, I think it is really worth it to read all of the books in order, because all of those main characters do show up as side characters in The Long Game, and I feel like you'll get a lot more out of this book if you know about all of the characters' backstories. So I'm really, really glad I read these. I also forget if I said this earlier on in the video, but I'm overall just like so happy that so many people have been talking about queer romance books. For me, obviously I read primarily queer historical romance, and sports romance overall has never really been my subgenre. However, I feel like now a whole new world has like opened up for me, and I'm definitely going to try and read more queer sports romances. I kind of was worried when Heated Rivalry was getting popular that it would just become the kind of like new generation of Red, White, and Royal Blue, of like the singular queer romance book that gets recommended amongst a bunch of other straight romance books. But at least from like the posts and stuff I've been seeing on Instagram, a lot of people have been using the Game Changer series as like a jumping off point to talk about a lot of other queer romance books, which I'm very, very happy to see. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, or subscribing if you aren't already. Consider following me on the Storygraph if you'd like to see my reading updates in real time, as well as following my Bookstagram, which is linked in the description. And that is going to be it for me today. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye! Mentioned before. Hello? Yeah? What is it, Missy? What? Missy? I also think oh, Missy. Hey, it's okay. Hey. It's okay, baby. Oh, ew, ew, ew.